Hey guys, tonight we're plunging into a furnace no soul would claim as paradise. Imagine your boots sinking into sun-scorched earth, where the air hangs heavy like molten lead, choking with dust that paints your skin in gritty veils, and the relentless heat whispers promises of exhaustion you can't escape. You might not emerge unscathed, so before we descend deeper, if this resonates truly, hit like and subscribe, only if it stirs something real in you. Share where you're tuning in from and the hour on your clock. It's fascinating how these whispered histories bridge our scattered nights. Now, soften the lights. Perhaps sip a chilled drink for that soothing chill against the imagined blaze, and let us ease into the tale. You're a Red Army infantryman, July 1943. Scarred survivor of winter's cruel grip, now rooted in Russia's vast steppe as defender of the soil that birthed you. The spade bites into the earth like a reluctant lover, yielding only grudging handfuls of sun-baked clay that clings to the blade as if mocking your efforts. Each swing sends a jolt up your arms, a dull throb that settles into your shoulders, whispering of the futility woven into every trench you carve. Yet you persist, because in this vast steppe, where the horizon mocks infinity, stopping means inviting the abyss. The sun hangs overhead like an indifferent judge, its rays piercing your faded uniform, turning sweat into rivers that carve salty paths down your back. And as you dig deeper, the hole grows not just in the ground, but within you, a hollow where doubt festers, disguised as resolve. Historians might later tally the kilometers of these defenses, hundreds snaking across the salient like veins pulsing with the motherland's blood. But for you, it's simply survival's geometry. Depth equals life, or at least a fleeting illusion of it. Your comrades labor beside you, their faces etched with the same grim determination, though occasionally a wry chuckle escapes, perhaps at the absurdity of turning this golden prairie into a scarred labyrinth, as if the land itself resents the intrusion. One man, broad-shouldered like a vulgar fisherman, pauses to wipe his brow and mutters something about how these trenches could double as graves, ready-made for the uninvited guests rolling from the west. It's not humor, not really. It's the quiet defiance of men who know the reaper's scythe swings closer with each passing hour. You share a nod, the kind that speaks volumes without words, and pass around a crumpled cigarette, its smoke curling lazily into the haze like fleeting prayers. The tobacco tastes bitter, laced with dust, but it anchors you to the moment, a small rebellion against the waiting that gnaws at your edges. Beneath the surface rhythm of shovels clanging against stone, fear simmers like heat rising from the parched soil. You've heard the whispers about the German beasts, tigers and panthers, iron-clad predators with hides that laugh at bullets. Will your PTRD rifle, that cumbersome stick of defiance, truly pierce their armor? Or will it merely ping off like a child's pebble? The question lingers as you reinforce the walls, packing earth tight, imagining the thunder of tracks that could crumple it all in an instant. Yet there's a strange poetry in the toil. Each layer of dirt is a testament to endurance, a barrier not just against steel, but against the erosion of hope. In quieter moments, when the sun dips lower and casts long shadows that stretch like accusing fingers, you reflect on how this digging mirrors life's fortifications. Walls built against unseen storms, often in vain, yet essential for the illusion of control. The political commissar strides along the line, his voice a steady anchor in the swirling uncertainty, reading aloud from crinkled letters smuggled from distant homes. One speaks of factories in the Urals forging tanks like vengeful gods, another from a wife in besieged Leningrad her words laced with quiet steel. Hold fast, my love. The children draw maps of victory in the dust. It's meant to kindle fire in your chest, and it does, though tempered by the irony of defending fields that once fed nations, now sown with mines and barbed wire like twisted thorns from a forgotten fairy tale. You listen, spade paused mid-air, and feel a surge of something deeper than patriotism, a raw kinship with those invisible souls pouring their sweat into the war machine, much like yours into this endless furrow. The commissar's eyes meet yours, sharp yet weary, as if he too senses the absurdity. We're all digging, in one way or another, against tides that seem inexorable, as dusk creeps in, painting the steppe in bruised purples and golds. The work slows but never truly halts. Blisters bloom on your palms like unwelcome medals, raw and weeping, yet you wrap them in rags torn from a spare shirt. Knowing pain is merely the price of readiness. A comrade shares a story from his village about a grandmother who outwitted wolves with nothing but cunning and a wooden spoon. It's laced with that dark twist, implying perhaps we're the wolves now, or the spoon, futile against fangs of steel. Laughter bubbles up, short and sharp, a fleeting balm against the oppressive quiet that follows. The air cools slightly, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers crushed underfoot, a reminder of what this land was before it became a chessboard for generals. You lean on your shovel, gazing at the jagged dragon's teeth obstacles rising like ancient ruins, designed to impale the enemy's advance, and wonder if they'll hold or merely delay the inevitable, much like the fragile barriers we erect in our own lives against chaos. Night fully claims the horizon, stars pricking the velvet sky like distant sentinels, indifferent to the drama unfolding below. Sleep comes in fits, curled in the trench's embrace, the earth cool against your cheek like a mother's indifferent hand. Dreams flicker, visions of home, a simple meal of borscht steaming on a wooden table, laughter echoing in a thatched hut, then shattered by the phantom roar of engines pulling you back to wakefulness. In those waking hours, the waiting sharpens everything. The rustle of wind through wheat stalks sounds like whispers of betrayal. The buzz of insects a prelude to bombers. Yet there's a profound lesson buried here, in the dirt under your nails, the unyielding human spirit, forging fortitude from despair, a quiet echo across time to those who now listen in their sleepless nights, grateful for the luxury of peace earned by such unseen labours. The fortifications grow by dawn's reluctant light, interconnected webs that historians will later praise as strategic genius, though you see them as desperate talismans against annihilation, barbed wire coils like serpents guarding forbidden fruit, minefields sown with invisible death. Each placement a calculated gamble in a game where lives are the currency. Your muscles scream in protest, but you push on, driven by that unspoken bond with comrades whose faces, etched with grime, mirror your weary resolve. One quips about how the Germans must envy our earthworks, mistaking them for luxurious bunkers, a chiseled sarcasm born from the edge of exhaustion, hinting at the madness of turning paradise into perdition. And as the sun climbs again, merciless as ever, you realize this digging isn't just preparation. It's a meditation on resilience, a silent vow that even in the face of mechanized horror, the human will to endure carves its indelible mark. By midday, the heat warps the air into shimmering veils, blurring the line between reality and hallucination. Water from your canteen tastes of rust and regret, rationed sips that barely quench the fire within. Meals are sparse, buckwheat porridge congealed into lumps, salted fish that crumbles like ancient parchment. Yet you eat with mechanical gratitude, knowing strength must be hoarded like ammunition. Conversations drift to safer shores, tales of pre-war harvests, lovers left behind, children who might never know their fathers' faces. There's a subtle irony in these reminiscences, as if, by evoking the pastoral idyll, you're thumbing your nose at the industrial behemoth poised to devour it. The commissar returns, his dispatches painting pictures of unbreakable Soviet might, factories belching forth T-34s like avenging spirits. But you sense the undercurrent, words as weapons, fragile against the steel tide. As evening approaches once more, the trench deepens, a chasm mirroring the one in your soul where hope and horror entwine. Flies swarm relentlessly, drawn to the salt of your labor, their buzz a constant dirge. You swat them away, pondering how even these pests outlast empires. A wry observation that curls your lip in fleeting amusement amid the drudgery. The waiting stretches, taut as the wire you string, each hour a thread in the tapestry of anticipation. And in this suspended breath before the storm, you find a peculiar grace, the knowledge that survival's forge tempers not just bodies, but spirits, lessons etched in soil for generations who, in their tranquil nights, might pause to honor the unseen architects of their freedom. The trench cradles you like a reluctant womb, its earthen walls pressing close, damp with the day's accumulated sweat and the faint, metallic tang of fear that seeps from every pore. Heat lingers even as the sun relents, turning the narrow confines into a stifling cocoon where air hangs thick, laced with the acrid bite of unwashed bodies and the subtle rot of anticipation. You settle against the rough slope, boots sinking slightly into the soft floor, churned by endless pacing, and feel the weight of it all, the invisible chains of duty binding you here in this sliver of borrowed earth, as if fate itself has carved out a pause before the inevitable unraveling. Water from your canteen sloshes meagerly, its taste a cruel mimicry of refreshment, rusty and flat like the promises of distant victories that echo hollow in your mind. Yet you sip it slowly, rationing each drop as though it were the essence of resilience itself, a quiet nod to the endurance that separates the living from the ghosts who once shared these walls. Meals arrive in dented tins, buckwheat porridge congealed into a greyish mass that clings to your spoon like reluctant confessions, flavoured only by the salt of dried fish that crumbles under your teeth, evoking memories of bountiful seas now poisoned by war's reach. You chew methodically, the act a ritual of defiance against the gnawing void within, while around you, comrades mirror the motion, their faces shadowed masks illuminated faintly by the dying light filtering through camouflage netting. One man, his eyes distant as forgotten horizons, breaks the silence with a hummed fragment of an old folk tune. Dark Eyes, perhaps, its melody weaving through the haze like a threadbare lifeline, pulling you back from the brink of isolation. It's not joy that stirs it, but a subtle irony, the way song defies the silence that war imposes, as if by voicing the unspeakable, you mock the machines poised to silence you forever. Linking arms in spirit, if not in flesh, you join in softly, the notes rising and falling like breaths in a shared dream, a fleeting communion that underscores how survival thrives, not in grand gestures, but in these whispered assertions of humanity. Fear coils deeper still, a serpent nestled in the pit of your stomach, fed by tales of the panther's impenetrable hides and the tiger's predatory growl. Beasts born of factories that churn death with mechanical precision. Training drills replay in your thoughts. gripping the PTRD's unwieldy barrel, its recoil a brutal reminder of your fragility, or bundling cluster grenades that feel absurdly light against the imagined weight of armored fury. Will they suffice, these makeshift fangs, or merely tickle the invaders' underbellies before retribution descends? The question hangs unspoken, yet it flavors every glance toward the steppe's deceptive calm, where sunflowers nod mockingly under the breeze, their golden faces turned toward a sun that blinds as much as it illuminates. And in this waiting, a wry reflection surfaces unbidden. How curiously alike we are to those ancient warriors who armed themselves with sticks against chariots, clinging to faith in tools that history deems quaint, a testament to the eternal folly of man pitting flesh against forge. The political commissar materializes like a spectre from the trench's bend, his uniform crisp in defiance of the dust that claims everything else, carrying dispatches that paint the rear lines as hives of unyielding production. Tanks rolling off assembly lines like avenging spirits, fueled by the sweat of mothers and children who etch their hopes into every weld. He reads of Stalingrad's triumph, words that ignite a flicker in weary eyes, tales of encircled foes crumbling under winter's grip, a narrative of reversal that whispers destiny might yet favor the steadfast. Yet beneath the rhetoric lies an undercurrent of quiet satire, as if the commissar himself senses the absurdity. Victories scripted on paper while you huddle in mud, betting lives on the gamble that resolve alone can bend steel. You listen, nodding in rhythm with the group, feeling the pull of collective will, a force as intangible as the wind yet capable of uprooting empires, much like how modern comforts, those electric lights and endless supplies we now take for granted, were forged from the anvil of such unyielding stands. Nights descend with a deceptive gentleness, the sky a vast canopy pricked by stars that watch impassively, their light a cold comfort against the encroaching dark. Sleep eludes you at first, the trenches embrace too intimate, too alive with the scuttle of unseen creatures and the distant coughs of comrades wrestling their demons. When it comes, it's fragmented, dreams invading like uninvited scouts, visions of Moscow's spires crumbling under tracked shadows, streets alive with the clamor of invasion, only to jolt awake to the reality of sweat-soaked fabric clinging like a second skin. In those lucid intervals, you ponder the tank's tyranny, how it reduces men to prey, scurrying shadows in a game where the board tilts eternally against the footbound. A comrade stirs nearby, murmuring of a pre-war love left in Kiev, his voice a fragile bridge to normalcy, laced with that bitter edge, how war twists romance into relic, a chiseled reminder that survival demands forgetting the soft edges of life. Dawn creeps back, relentless as the cycle it mirrors, pulling you into another loop of preparation, cleaning weapons with rags that fray like nerves, ensuring the Mosin Nagant's bolt slides smoothly, free of the grit that could spell betrayal in the heat of confrontation. The heat builds anew, a furnace stoked by the sun's indifferent climb, turning the trench into a cauldron where tempers simmer and resolve hardens. You swat at flies that orbit like persistent doubts, their buzz a mocking chorus to your internal monologue, questioning the worth of this vigil. Yet in the shared glances, the past canteens, there's an unspoken pact. Endurance isn't mere stubbornness, but a profound alchemy, transmuting despair into the steel of will, a legacy that echoes through time to those who, in quieter eras, might pause amid their trials to draw strength from such shadowed vigils. As midday's blaze peaks, conversations turn inward, laced with that subtle undercurrent of resignation masked as resolve. speculating on the enemy's hubris, how their vaunted machines might falter in the motherland's embrace, much like overreaching empires throughout history that crumbled under their weight. It's a form of quiet rebellion, this mental sparring, forging mental armor against the onslaught to come. You finger the cluster grenades at your belt, their weight a tangible promise of reciprocity, imagining the bloom of fire that could humble even the mightiest panther. And in this limbo, the trench becomes more than shelter, a microcosm of existence, where the mundane rituals of eating, waiting, and whispering bind you to a greater narrative, one that honors the unheralded fortitude of those who stand guard, their stories woven into the fabric of survival that drapes our present peace. The hours, elastic with tension, each one a bead on fate's abacus, tallying toward the unknown. A letter from home arrives crumpled in a comrade's hand. Words from a sister in the Urals speaking of makeshift schools and unyielding spirits. A poignant contrast to your subterranean world. You read it aloud in turns, voices soft as twilight, drawing sustenance from the ink's fragile defiance. There's an inherent poetry here, in how ink on paper defies the chaos, much like your entrenched vigil defies the mechanized tide. A chiseled irony that even in desperation, humanity clings to narratives of hope. As shadows lengthen once more, you settle deeper. The trench's walls a silent witness to your quiet vigil, embodying the timeless truth that true strength lies not in conquest, but in the unyielding hold on ground, both literal and metaphorical, a lesson etched in earth for those who follow in safer times. The first blush of dawn creeps across the steppe like a thief in the night, stealing the fragile veil of darkness that had offered some semblance of mercy, only to reveal a sky bruised with impending fury. You stir in the trench's unyielding grasp, the cool earth beneath you a fleeting comfort against the warmth already stirring in the air, as if the world itself holds its breath, knowing what's to come. Then it begins, not with a whisper, but a cataclysmic roar that shatters the fragile peace. Thousands of German guns unleashing their wrath in unison, the horizon erupting in a symphony of destruction that mocks any notion of human scale. The ground heaves beneath you like a living beast awakening in agony, each shell's whistle slicing the air before detonating in geysers of soil and flame, turning the once serene fields into a churning sea of chaos. You press yourself flat against the trench floor, helmet clutched tight as if it could ward off the apocalypse, your body curling instinctively into a ball, every fiber screaming against the onslaught that seems to pulse through your bones. Historians will later debate the sheer scale of that barrage, how the Wehrmacht poured forth from over 2,000 artillery pieces for nearly 2 hours, a calculated inferno designed to pulverize defenses and spirits alike. Yet in the moment, such numbers dissolve into irrelevance, reduced to the raw terror of earth raining down like judgment from above. Dust invades everything. Your eyes sting with it, your lungs choke on its gritty embrace, and the world narrows to the thunderous rhythm pounding in your ears, each explosion a hammer blow that blurs vision and thought. Linking one tremor to the next, you cling to fragments of resolve, whispering fragments of orders like mantras. Not one step back, though the words feel absurd now, a fragile incantation against forces that reduce men to mere specks in the storm. And beneath the fear, a subtle reflection stirs, unbidden. How quaint our preparations seem, these hand-dug scars in the earth, pitted against the mechanical gods birthed from distant forges, as if humanity's defiance is but a cosmic jest, enduring only to highlight its fragility. The barrage drags on, eternal in its fury, each minute stretching like taffy pulled taut by despair, until your senses numb, the constant roar blending into a deafening hum that drowns out even your heartbeat. You taste blood from biting your lip, a sharp counterpoint to the numbness spreading through limbs pinned by invisible weights, and in that suspended hell, memories flicker like faulty lanterns. A childhood dawn breaking over peaceful fields, harvest gathered under a benevolent sun, now twisted into this parody where light brings not life but annihilation. Yet there's an odd poetry in the endurance, a quiet acknowledgement that survival hinges on this very compression, curling small against the vast, as generations before bent to storms of their own making, forging from such crucibles the unyielding spine that history quietly admires. The air thickens with smoke, turning day to premature twilight, a veil that softens the horizon's horrors but amplifies the isolation. Each comrade a shadowed form huddled nearby, their breaths ragged links in a chain of shared fate. Finally, the guns fall silent, not with relief, but a pregnant pause that vibrates with worse omens. The earth still quivering like a wounded animal, debris settling in soft patterns that mock the violence just unleashed. You dare to lift your head, peering over the trench's lip, eyes watering against the acrid haze, only to feel the ground tremble anew. This time, not from above, but from the depths, a low growl building into the unmistakable thunder of engines. There they come, silhouettes emerging from the smoke like phantoms from a nightmare. Panzers and tigers rolling forward in inexorable waves, their cannons swiveling with predatory grace, steel behemoths that dwarf the landscape, turning golden fields into mere backdrops for their advance. Above, the sky splits with the wail of Stukas diving low, their Jericho sirens howling like banshees foretelling doom, a psychological blade that slices through resolve before the bombs even fall. In that instant, primal fear surges, a tidal wave crashing against the fragile dams of training and duty, your hands trembling as you grip the trench's edge, watching the monsters approach with a speed that belies their mass. It's as if the earth conspires with them, the steppe offering no resistance, just an open invitation to devour. Yet woven into the terror is that wry undercurrent, surfacing like a bubble in mud. How elegantly absurd, these iron titans crafted by hands not unlike yours, now poised to erase the very creators who dared dream of mastery over metal. The sirens peak, diving planes unleashing their payloads in explosions that rock the line anew, flames blooming like infernal flowers across the defenses, and you duck once more, heart pounding a frantic rhythm against ribs that feel too fragile for the weight they bear. Linking breath to breath, you steel yourself, knowing this is but the prelude, a destined unraveling where flesh meets forge, and survival becomes a gamble etched in smoke and soil. The advance presses closer, the rumble now a visceral quake that vibrates through your core, each track's grind a taunt against the motherland's silence. Shouts ripple down the trench, hold firm, echoing like echoes in a vast emptiness, commands that bind you to this spot, this sliver of defiance amid the encroaching tide. You glimpse the first tiger through the haze, its turret a cyclopean eye scanning for prey, and feel the chill despite the heat, a paradox that underscores war's twisted logic. Machines impervious to the sun's blaze, while you, mortal and exposed, wilt under its gaze. Historians might pass the strategy behind this onslaught, how the Germans sought to pinch the salient with pincer movements, concentrating elite divisions in a bid to reclaim initiative lost at Stalingrad. But such analyses fade against the immediate. The acrid burn of cordite in your nostrils, the dust clouding your vision like tears unshed. as the planes wheel away for another pass, their sirens fading into a haunting echo that lingers in your skull. You force yourself to breathe deeply, drawing in the scorched air as if it could fortify your spirit. There's a profound irony here bubbling from the depths of exhaustion. Humanity's grand inventions, meant to conquer distance and time, now serve only to hasten endings, turning vast plains into intimate killing grounds where distance collapses under the weight of inevitability. Yet in this maelstrom, a quiet valor emerges, unspoken but palpable. The knowledge that your stand, however fleeting, weaves into the tapestry of resilience that future souls will trace with grateful fingers, marveling at the fortitude that birthed their freedoms from such shadowed dawns. The first shells from your artillery answer back, a defiant counterpoint that shakes the air anew. Blooms of fire erupting amid the advancing ranks, halting some beasts in twisted metal screams. You rise slightly, rifle at the ready, eyes fixed on the approaching shadows, feeling the pull of destiny's thread tightening around you. The barrage's legacy lingers in the ringing of your ears, a constant reminder of vulnerability, yet it also kindles something deeper, a trammeled fury born from the soil itself, as if the land whispers encouragement through the tremors. Linking one heartbeat to the collective pulse of the line, you brace for the clash, aware that in this bloodied sunrise, survival isn't victory but a momentary grace, a lesson in endurance that echoes across eras, reminding those in quieter times of the fragile thread binding past sacrifices to present peace. The machines draw nearer, their shadows lengthening like fate's inexorable reach, and you ready yourself, a single note in the symphony of resistance that time will never fully silence. The steel tide surges closer, each rumble a seismic proclamation that fate has tipped its hand, transforming the steppe's golden expanse into a theater where flesh dances with unforgiving metal. You clutch the PTRD's cold barrel, its weight a mocking anchor against the tremor in your hands, as the first tiger emerges from the haze like a primordial beast awakened from slumber, its turret scanning with mechanical indifference, as if the lives it seeks are mere footnotes in some grand, indifferent ledger. The air thickens with the acrid promise of cordite, linking the barrage's fading echoes to this new crescendo, where the horizon births not dawn's gentle light, but the silhouettes of predators forged in distant foundries, their tracks gouging the earth like claws, claiming territory already stained by anticipation. And in that suspended breath, a quiet musing drifts unbidden. How curiously poetic, these iron colossi, born from human ingenuity yet destined to devour their creators, a chiseled satire on progress that leaves only twisted husks in its wake. Shouts cascade down the line, tanks advancing, a ripple of destiny that propels you upward, peering through the trench's lip into the maelstrom, where panthers prowl in packs, their cannons belching fire that splits the air with surgical precision. You shoulder the anti-tank rifle, its recoil a brutal communion that jars your frame, sending rounds toward the nearest beast's underbelly, where armor thins like a predator's soft spot exposed in hubris. Historians might later chronicle how Soviet tank hunter teams, armed with these cumbersome rifles and cluster grenades, formed the backbone of resistance, piercing tracks and igniting fuel lines in desperate bids to halt the inexorable. But for you, it's visceral. The ping of a glancing shot, a hollow rebuke against impenetrable hides, followed by the satisfying bloom of flame when fortune aligns, a fleeting victory that mocks the odds stacked like minefields before you. The heat intensifies, not just from the sun's relentless gaze, but from the inferno unfolding, engines roaring like thunderous accusations, linking one explosion to the next in a chain of calculated chaos. A comrade bolts from cover, bundle of mines clutched like a lover's final embrace, charging toward a lumbering Ferdinand whose self-propelled gun swivels too slowly to catch his fleeting form. He vanishes under its bulk in a deafening eruption, the machine grinding to a halt amid twisted metal and acrid smoke. A sacrifice that buys precious seconds, yet leaves a void where laughter once echoed in the trench's quiet hours. You feel the pull of that act, a destined echo of countless before it, where men become instruments of disruption, hurling themselves against the tide not for glory, but for the slender thread of continuation. Molotov cocktails arc through the air from nearby positions, shattering against hulls in fiery cascades that lick greedily at vents and seams, turning armored fortresses into pyres that illuminate the absurdity. How fragile these behemoths prove when kissed by simple flame. A wry testament to ingenuity born from scarcity, outwitting the opulent engineering of foes who wagered on invincibility. Dust chokes the battlefield now, a swirling veil that blurs distinctions between ally and adversary, reducing vision to hazy impressions where shadows loom and dissipate like ghosts in a fevered dream. You reload mechanically, fingers numb yet precise. The PTRD's bolt sliding with a click that punctuates the cacophony, each shot a defiant whisper against the roar. Linking breath to action, you dive into a crater pocked by earlier shells, the earth cradling you like an indifferent guardian. As a Stuka's siren wails overhead, its dive a plummeting arrow that unleashes hell upon the line. The ground erupts nearby, showering debris that patters like rain on your helmet, and in that momentary burial, a subtle reflection surfaces. How war distills existence to these raw pulses, where survival hinges on the caprice of trajectories, much like modern lives navigated unseen perils with the illusion of control. Grateful for the buffers history's scars have wrought. The advance falters in places, minefields claiming their toll as panzers detonate in spectacular blooms, tracks flung skyward like discarded limbs, a calculated harvest sown by unseen hands in the nights prior. Historians will note how these defences, layered with anti-tank ditches and strongpoints bristling with guns, rifles and machine nests, formed an impenetrable web that bled the German thrust dry, forcing close-quarters carnage where numerical edges blurred. You seize the moment, scrambling forward with a cluster grenade, heart a frantic drum against ribs that ache from the barrage's legacy, lobbing it toward a stalled tiger's rear where exhaust belches vulnerability. The blast reverberates, smoke billowing like a sigh of release, and cheers mingle with screams down the line, a chorus that underscores the fleeting equilibrium. One beast slain, yet hordes remain, their cannons traversing with mechanical patience, seeking the next fragile form to erase. Exhaustion creeps in like twilight's shadow, each movement laboured under the sun's unyielding scrutiny, sweat mingling with blood from shallow cuts that map the morning's toll. A nearby squad unleashes a volley of anti-tank rounds, their PTRS barking in unison, perforating a panther's flank in a shower of sparks that dance like fireflies born from destruction. The machine lists, crew scrambling out only to meet infantry fire, a grim ballet where roles reverse. Hunters become hunted in the steppe's indifferent arena. And amid the din, that wry undercurrent persists, bubbling from the depths. How elegantly futile these clashes seem, machines crafted to conquer yet undone by the simplest human resolve. A satire on ambition that leaves fields littered with mechanical corpses. echoes for those in calmer eras to ponder the cost of unchecked might. The battle's rhythm shifts, waves of armor pressing then recoiling as reserves trickle in, T-34s rumbling from rear positions to bolster the line, their cannons adding to the symphony that drowns individual cries. You fire again, the recoil slamming like judgment, a round glancing off a Ferdinand's sloped front, harmless as a pebble against a Leviathan. Yet persistence wears, linking one futile act to collective erosion. Comrades fall around you, silenced mid-charge, or vaporized in blasts that leave craters as memorials, their absence a hollow that deepens the trench of your soul. Yet in their wake, a profound resonance emerges, the unyielding thread of camaraderie, weaving through despair to forge bonds that transcend the immediate horror, a legacy of fortitude that whispers across time, reminding distant listeners of the fragile valor that underpins their serene nights. As the sun climbs higher, casting harsh shadows over the carnage, the assault wanes in intensity, pockets of resistance flaring like embers in a dying fire. You slump against the crater's edge, rifle hot to the touch, surveying the smouldering hulks that dot the landscape like fallen titans, their demise a testament to the improbable. How desperation births ingenuity, turning improvised weapons into equalizers against engineered supremacy. The air hangs heavy with the stench of diesel and charred remnants, a perfume of Pyrrhic triumph that clings like regret. Linking one breath to the next, you ready for the inevitable resurgence, aware that this clash is but a verse in destiny's unrelenting epic, where survival's grace notes honor the unseen architects of resilience, their echoes a balm for those who, in quieter realms, trace the fragile paths from such bloody dawns to their unscarred horizons. The steppe, once a canvas of serene gold, now bears the scars of this mechanical ballet, craters pocking its surface like accusations leveled at the sky. A stray Stuka circles overhead, its siren muted now, perhaps scouting the wreckage for signs of life to extinguish, but your line holds, a ragged testament to the motherland's unyielding embrace. In the lull, thoughts drift to the absurdity of it all. Men hurling glass bottles at steel giants, as if fairy tales of David and Goliath were rewritten in fire and fury, a chiseled irony that even exhaustion can't fully dull. Yet it's this very folly that kindles hope, a spark amid the ashes, linking your stand to the broader weave of endurance that history quietly exalts, a subtle nod to the fortitude that bridges eras, allowing future souls to slumber soundly on foundations forged in such shadowed crucibles. The flames dance across the steppe like fickle spirits, casting erratic shadows that twist the wreckage into grotesque forms, as if the land itself mocks the hubris of those who sought to tame it with fire and steel. You huddle in a crater's jagged embrace, the earth still warm from the day's inferno, its walls a makeshift sanctuary that cradles your weary frame like an indifferent lover, offering solace laced with the constant threat of collapse. The battle's pulse throbs on, not in grand surges but in erratic spasms, trenches breached like fragile vows, only to be mended with desperate hands scooping soil under sporadic fire, linking one shattered line to the next in a chain of unyielding defiance. Tanko boyazin grips you now, that insidious phobia weaving through your thoughts like smoke through cracks, where every looming silhouette on the horizon triggers a primal flinch, reducing you to a shadow scurrying between craters, waiting for the moment to strike or flee. It's not the rifles of infantrymen that haunt you, but those hulking forms, ironclad sentinels that rumble with mechanical inevitability, their presence a constant reminder of mortality's fragile lease, You press forward through the haze, boots sinking into soil churned into mud by the ceaseless barrage. Each step a negotiation with exhaustion that pulls at your limbs like invisible chains forged in the heat of endless vigilance. A shell whistles overhead, detonating nearby with a concussive embrace that showers grit like confetti from a macabre celebration. And you dive low, heart hammering against ribs that ache from the vibration alone. Historians will pore over the carnage at Prokhorovka, debating the true tally of tanks clashing in that colossal fray. Perhaps 1,000 or more locked in mutual annihilation, with losses mounting to hundreds on each side, figures that paint the clash as a pivotal hemorrhage for the Wehrmacht's armored might. But for you, ensnared in the grit, such abstractions dissolve into the immediate. The acrid tang of overheated barrels, the way dust coats your tongue like a veil of forgotten promises, turning every breath into a labored act of persistence. A comrade crumples beside you, felled by a sniper's whisper or a stray fragment that slices through the chaos with surgical indifference, his body folding like a discarded puppet whose strings fate has severed without ceremony. You crawl to him, not out of sentiment, but necessity, fingers fumbling through his pockets for the water flask that glints dully in the flickering light, its contents a lukewarm elixir that sustains more than quenches. A quiet theft born from the arithmetic of survival where grief yields to pragmatism. His eyes stare blankly at the smoke-veiled sky, a silent accusation that lingers as you retreat, flask secured, linking his end to your continuation in a chain as old as conflict itself. There's no time for mourning, only the mechanical scavenging of ammunition from his belt, rounds that feel heavier with the weight of borrowed life, as if each bullet carries a fragment of his unfulfilled resolve. Night descends not as relief, but as a deeper veil, the steppe illuminated by the pyres of gutted machines, whose flames lick the darkness like tongues, tasting victory's bitter residue, casting an unearthly glow that turns craters into shadowed altars. The smell permeates everything, charred metal mingling with the sweeter, more insidious note of seared flesh, a perfume that clings to your uniform like an unwelcome memory, reminding you of how war distills existence to its rawest essences, where even the air becomes an accomplice in the erosion of spirit. You wipe your rifle obsessively, dust and grime embedding under nails that have long forgotten cleanliness. The bolts slide a rhythmic incantation against jams that could spell erasure in the next dawn's fury. Linking one stroke to the next, you reflect on the irony woven into this vigil. How these weapons, extensions of human will, demand constant tending like needy children, yet offer no guarantees against the indifferent maw of machinery that devours without pause. In the lulls between skirmishes, when the roar fades to a distant grumble, dreams intrude like uninvited ghosts, fragmented visions of a family table laden with simple fare, laughter echoing in a modest idzba far from this scorched arena, only to shatter under the phantom crush of tracks grinding bone. You awaken with a start, pulse racing, to the cry of, "For the motherland, hurrah!" from a nearby squad launching a desperate counter, their voices a defiant chorus that pierces the night, hurling themselves at a stalled Ferdinand with grenades clutched like talismans against oblivion. One soldier, wounded yet unyielding, crawls toward the enemy line, his form a serpentine shadow against the flames, dragging a satchel charge in a bid to turn predator into prey, a gesture of profound futility that nonetheless kindles a spark of awe, linking individual audacity to the collective tapestry of endurance that history quietly weaves. The fire's glow reveals more horrors, Twisted hulls of T-34s interlocked with Panthers in eternal embraces, their crews scattered like discarded thoughts, faces frozen in eternal surprise or resignation. You scavenge what you can. A half-empty magazine here, a ration bar smeared with soot there. Acts of quiet predation that underscore the battle's grim economy, where waste is the only true sin. And in these moments, a subtle undercurrent surfaces, born from the depths where hope frays, how war mocks abundance, turning bountiful fields into barren wastelands littered with the remnants of ambition. A chiseled commentary on excess that leaves survivors to ponder the fragile balance of need and greed in quieter epochs. Dawn's tentative fingers creep back, painting the wreckage in softer hues that belie the night's toll, as you are ready for the renewal of strife, body aching with the accumulated wear of ceaseless motion. A comrade shares a morsel of hardened bread, its crust cracking like the resolve that holds you here. A simple exchange that binds you in silent pact, acknowledging the profound alchemy of shared scarcity. Linking sustenance to spirit, you feel the pull of destiny's inexorable thread, where each breath defies the odds, forging from desperation a resilience that echoes across time. A subtle homage to the unheralded fortitude that underpins the freedoms of those who follow, their lives spared the crucible's harsh forge. The machines stir anew, engines coughing to life in the distance like beasts rousing from fitful slumber. Their advance a relentless tide that tests the line's frayed edges. You position yourself in a fresh crater, rifle steady despite the tremor in your core, firing at exposed flanks where armor thins like illusions stripped bare. Explosions punctuate the morning, linking one defiance to the next, as grenades bloom against hulls, halting some in fiery protests that illuminate the steppe's scarred face. Yet loss mounts inexorably. A squadmate vaporized mid-stride by a cannon's retort, his shadow lingering in the dust like an afterimage of what was, prompting you to press on, scavenging his untouched flask as a quiet inheritance, the water within an elixir of continuance amid the entropy. In this maelstrom, where survival hangs by threads as slender as rifle sights, a profound serenity occasionally descends, born from the acceptance that fate's wheel turns indifferent to please. You wipe sweat from your brow, tasting the salt of exertion mingled with the bitterness of smoke, and muse on the elegance of it all. How desperation crafts heroes from ordinary clay, turning fear into fuel that propels you forward. A legacy etched in the soil for distant observers to trace with grateful wonder, their trials paling against the forge that tempered such unbreakable spirits. The fire rages on, but so do you, a flickering ember in the vast conflagration, linking one moment's defiance to eternity's quiet nod. The steppe ignites into a vast cauldron, where steel clashes like primordial forces locked in an eternal grudge, turning the once serene horizon into a fractured mosaic of flame and shadow that devours the very air you breathe. You crawl through craters pocked like the skin of some ancient, wounded giant, the earth yielding beneath your elbows in soft, treacherous sighs, as the thunder of colliding behemoths reverberates through your bones, linking each tremor to a destiny scripted in smoke and shattered alloy. Prokhorovka unfolds not as a battlefield, but as an inferno's heart, where T-34s and Panthers entwine in lethal embraces, their hulls grinding together with the intimacy of doomed lovers, sparks flying like fleeting regrets in the haze. Historians still argue about the true scale of that colossal melee, some tallying nearly 1,000 tanks locked in mutual annihilation on July 12th, with Soviet forces fielding over 600 against a German contingent half that size, losses spiraling into hundreds on the red side, while the invaders claimed far fewer irreparable wrecks, debates that stripped the myth of its grandeur, revealing a clash less of titanic equals and more of desperate asymmetry, where numbers clashed against cunning in a bid to redefine the war's inexorable flow. Grenades arc from your hand like desperate pleas hurled into the void, detonating against a panther's flank, with a bloom of fire that licks upward like a serpent tasting freedom. The explosion's heat washing over you in waves that singe your uniform and sear your resolve. You feel the ground buck beneath you, a living entity protesting the weight of these iron intruders, as a nearby T-34 erupts in a pyrotechnic gasp, its turret spiraling skyward like a discarded crown from a fallen monarch. Flames devouring the crew within before they can escape their steel tomb. The air thickens with the metallic tang of overheated barrels and the sweeter, more insidious rot of fuel igniting flesh, a perfume that clings to your nostrils like an unwelcome memory, linking each breath to the cycle of creation and ruin that defines this maelstrom. And in the midst of it, a subtle musing drifts through the fog of adrenaline. How absurdly elegant these machines crafted to conquer vastness, now reduced to smouldering husks in a confined arena of mutual destruction, as if war delights in miniaturizing grand ambitions into piles of twisted scrap. You press on, weaving between the carcasses of fallen beasts, their tracks frozen in mid-stride like the petrified limbs of ancient predators caught in amber. The steppe's golden veil now charred black in patches that spread like ink blots on a forgotten manuscript. A German soldier darts from cover, his form a fleeting shadow against the blaze, abandoning his post in a scramble that betrays the universal frailty beneath the armor. Your first glimpse that even the invaders, those heralded as unbreakable, harbor the same primal terror that knots your gut, a revelation that humanizes the faceless foe without diminishing the chasm between you. Linking one evasion to the next, you hurl another grenade, watching it nestle against a Ferdinand's undercarriage before erupting in a cascade of shrapnel that halts its advance, the machine listing like a toppled idol whose worshippers have fled. The Luftwaffe's shadows wheel overhead, Stukas diving with their wailing sirens that pierce the din like accusations from the heavens, bombs cratering the ground anew and scattering formations in bursts of earth and fire. A symphony where air and land conspire in harmonious devastation. The chaos peaks in close quarters frenzy, where tanks ram each other like bulls in a ritual of dominance, hulls scraping with the screech of metal protesting its existence, sparks showering like fleeting stars born from friction's fury. You bob through the melee, rifles slung low, targeting exposed crews who clamber from hatches like rats fleeing a sinking vessel, their desperation mirroring your own in a mirror of mutual vulnerability. The smell intensifies, burnt rubber mingling with the acrid bite of cordite. A bouquet that overwhelms the senses like an overripe fruit bursting under pressure, linking each inhalation to the inexorable toll of attrition. And beneath the roar, that wry undercurrent persists, surfacing like a bubble in boiling tar. How comically tragic these vaunted engines of war, designed for swift conquest, now entangled in a sluggish dance of death, their might undermined by the simple chaos of proximity. A satire on engineering's arrogance that leaves fields sown with mechanical relics for posterity to ponder. Night falls not as a curtain, but as a deepening shroud, the fires persisting like stubborn embers in a hearth reluctant to die, illuminating the wreckage in flickers that cast elongated shadows across the craters, turning the battlefield into a labyrinth of light and void. You slump into a trench's fold, the earth cool against your fevered skin like a balm applied too late. dreams invading before true sleep claims you. Visions of your childhood fields, golden waves rippling under a gentle breeze, now ravaged by phantom tracks that plough furrows of destruction, uprooting sunflowers in merciless swaths. The imagery lingers upon waking, a poignant echo of the day's toll, where the steppe's beauty lies desecrated under the weight of conflict, linking personal loss to the broader canvas of a nation's scarred soul. Yet in this nocturnal vigil, a profound resilience stirs, born from the acceptance that endurance forges meaning from mayhem, a quiet tribute to the unheralded fortitude that bridges eras, allowing distant hearts to beat in rhythm with those who brave such shadowed trials. The clamour resumes with dawn's reluctant glow, machines stirring like beasts roused from uneasy repose, their engines coughing plumes that mingle with the morning mist like breath from slumbering dragons. You navigate the debris, stepping over twisted remnants that jut from the soil like forgotten sculptures of folly, each one a monument to overreach. A Katyusha salvo arcs overhead, rockets screaming like avenging spirits, impacting amid the German ranks in eruptions that scatter formations and ignite fresh pyres. The steppe responding with quakes that ripple through your frame. Linking salvo to counter, you press the attack, grenade in hand, targeting a tiger's vision slit in a bid to blind the predator, the blast echoing with the satisfaction of parity achieved, however fleeting. The air hums with the whine of projectiles, a deadly orchestra where Nebelwerfers answer in kind, their rockets blooming overhead like malevolent flowers that rain shrapnel in indiscriminate grace. Amid the bedlam, you witness a Panther's turret jam mid-traverse, its crew exposed in a moment of vulnerability that humanizes the machine's menace, their frantic efforts a mirror to your ceaseless toil. You fire, rounds pinging off armor with the futility of rain against stone. Yet persistence yields. A fuel line ruptures, flames engulfing the hull in a voracious embrace that consumes with impartial hunger. The sight evokes a subtle introspection. How delicately balanced this dance of destruction, where a single flaw unravels the illusion of invincibility. A chiseled commentary on perfection's myth that resonates through the ages, reminding those in calmer climes of the fragile threads weaving triumph from tragedy's loom. The engagement drags into exhaustion's realm, bodies and machines alike faltering under the relentless strain, the steppe a canvas smeared with the remnants of ambition's overreach. You retreat to a crater's lip, breath ragged, surveying the sea of fire where T-34s and Ferdinands lie interlocked in eternal stasis, their forms twisted like lovers in a fatal quarrel. The losses mount invisibly, each fallen comrade a verse in an unspoken elegy, linking individual fates to the collective saga of a nation's unbowed spirit. Yet in this crucible, a profound alchemy transpires, transmuting despair into the tempered steel of legacy, a silent homage to the resilience that underpins history's quiet march, allowing future generations to tread paths cleared by such shadowed forges, their freedoms etched in the embers of forgotten fires. The blaze rages on, but so does the will to endure, a flickering beacon in the vast, indifferent night. Exhaustion settles over you like a shroud woven from the steppe's dust, its threads pulling at every muscle, turning movements into mechanical echoes of will, long eroded by the ceaseless grind. Each reload of your rifle feels like lifting the weight of forgotten promises, the bolt sliding with a reluctant click that mirrors the stutter in your breath, as if your body protests the endless cycle of aim, fire, and duck, linking one futile gesture to the next in a chain forged from sheer necessity. The sun hangs low now, casting elongated shadows that stretch across the craters like fingers grasping for respite. Yet you persist, slumped against a trench wall that crumbles slightly under your weight, its soil yielding like the fragile resolve that holds you here. The battle's rhythm has dulled into a monotonous throb, shells whistling intermittently like distant sighs, each explosion a punctuation in a narrative that seems eternally suspended between advance and retreat. You wipe grime from your eyes, tasting the salt of sweat mingled with the bitterness of cordite that lingers on your lips, a flavor that has become as familiar as regret, underscoring how war distills life to its basest essences, where even rest is a luxury bartered in stolen moments amid the wreckage. Your limbs ache with the accumulated toll of days blurred into one interminable haze, where sleep comes in snatches haunted by the phantom roar of engines that never truly fade, leaving you to awaken with a start, pulse racing, as if the fight invades even your subconscious sanctuary. A comrade nearby slumps similarly, his face etched with lines that age him beyond his years, muttering curses under his breath at the futility of it all. How the machines keep coming, wave after relentless wave, as if mocking the human frame's limitations with their tireless churn. Yet in his words, there's that subtle undercurrent, born from the depths, where hope frays into cynicism. How comically persistent we are, frail bags of bone and blood pitting ourselves against these iron Goliaths, as if evolution's grand design overlooked the absurdity of flesh enduring the forge's wrath. Linking exhaustion to endurance, you share a nod, the gesture a silent pact that acknowledges the profound irony. Survival isn't triumph, but a stubborn refusal to yield, a quiet rebellion against the entropy that claims so many around you. Signs of shift emerge subtly at first, like cracks in a dam foretelling the flood. More German hulks smolder on the horizon, their flames flickering like distant candles snuffed by an unseen hand, the acrid smoke curling upward in lazy spirals that blend with the evening haze. Historians will later detail how the Red Army unleashed its reserves, deploying over 5,000 tanks in a colossal counterpunch that overwhelmed the Wehrmacht's elite divisions, turning the tide through sheer mass and unyielding momentum, a strategic deluge that drowned the invaders' ambitions in their overextension. For you, it's visceral. The rumble of T-34s approaching from the rear, their engines a reassuring growl that cuts through the din, like a mother's call piercing a child's nightmare, linking distant reinforcements to your immediate salvation. The first wave crests the ridge, cannons barking in unison, shells arcing toward the enemy lines in blooms of destruction that halt the Panthers in mid-prowl, their tracks grinding to futile halts amid the chaos. Hope Leloy then, not as a blazing torch, but as a faint ember stirring in your chest, warming the chill of fatigue that had settled like frost on your spirit. You watch a T-34 ram a Tiger broadside, the collision resounding like thunder clapping against stone, metal screeching in protest as the heavier beast lists, its turret jammed in a final, impotent swivel. Cheers ripple down the trench, hoarse and ragged, a chorus born from throats raw with dust and shouts, yet laced with that profound relief of reversal, fate's wheel turning, however slowly, in your favor. A young soldier nearby, his face still boyish beneath the grime, breaks into song, Volga boatmen, spilling from his lips in a low, steady hum that weaves through the smoke like a thread of continuity, linking ancestral labors to this modern toil, where pulling against the current means defying not rivers, but rivers of steel. You join in softly, the melody a balm that soothes the frayed edges of your mind, evoking images of vast waterways tamed by collective strength. a metaphor for the unyielding bond that turns individual despair into shared fortitude. During this shifting tide, you stumble upon a discarded German ration pack amid the debris, its contents spilling like forbidden treasures. A hardened biscuit that crumbles under your fingers, tasting foreign yet sustaining. A morsel you break and share with the young singer, his eyes lighting with gratitude that transcends words. For the mothers who baked better, he quips faintly, the words carrying a wry edge honed by hunger, as if mocking the enemy's provisions while honoring the absent hands that once nourished you both. Linking bite to bite, you feel a surge of kinship, the simple act rekindling a flame that exhaustion had nearly extinguished, reminding you how survival thrives on these minuscule mercies, fragments of normalcy scavenged from the ruins, much like how modern abundances, endless shelves and warm hearths, are built upon the unheralded scarcities endured by those who came before. The transition from dread to determination unfolds gradually, like dawn dispelling night's grip, your movements gaining purpose as the T-34s multiply, their presence a reassuring phalanx that bolsters the line, cannons thundering in salvos that push the invaders back, inch by contested inch. Fear recedes not entirely, but to a manageable whisper, supplanted by a steely resolve that hardens your gaze, turning the steppe's scarred face into a canvas of potential reclamation. You fire with renewed precision, rounds finding gaps in the retreating armor. Each hit a punctuation in the narrative of reversal, linking desperation's ebb to hope's tentative flow. Yet beneath the emerging confidence lies a melancholy acknowledgement, the cost etched in the silent forms littering the field, comrades whose sacrifices pave this path forward, their stillness a quiet elegy that tempers triumph with sorrow, a profound lesson in the duality of progress, where gains are forever shadowed by loss. As the sun dips lower, painting the wreckage in hues of amber and crimson like an artist's final weary strokes, you slump against a T-34's warm flank, its engine idling with a comforting purr that vibrates through your frame, easing the knots of tension woven by days of unrelenting strain. The young soldier joins you, sharing another fragment of the scavenged biscuit, his voice low as he speaks of a mother in distant Smolensk, her letters filled with tales of unyielding gardens blooming amid ruins, a metaphor for the resilience blooming within you now. Linking reflection to resolve, you sense the shift complete. From besieged to besieger, fear transmuted into fuel for the long march ahead. A quiet alchemy that honors the unbowed spirit forging history's arc, allowing those in later, softer times to draw from such wells of fortitude when their own trials whisper of defeat. The fires dim as night claims the steppe once more, embers glowing like distant stars fallen to earth, their light a subdued testament to the day's Pyrrhic exchanges. You close your eyes briefly, the T-34's warmth seeping into your bones like a borrowed embrace, dreams hovering at the edge, visions of a Berlin in ruins, not out of vengeance but inevitable reciprocity, the wheel turning full circle in fate's inexorable design. Yet woven into the reverie is that subtle undercurrent, surfacing like a ripple in still water. How delicately ironic, this resurgence born from the brink, where exhaustion's nadir births unbreakable bonds, a satire on human limits that reveals our greatest strength lies in the collective refusal to fracture. Linking one weary breath to the dawn's promise, you rise renewed, the steppe's scars now badges of a turning tide, a legacy etched in flame for those who, in peaceful vigils, trace the fragile paths from such shadowed forges to their unscarred horizons. The fight endures, but so does the spark, flickering defiantly in the gathering dark. The order ripples through the trenches like a whisper carried on the steppe's weary breath. Forward. A single word that unfurls like a banner long furled in the shadows, pulling you from the earth's clinging embrace into the open maw of the scarred plain. You clamber over the trench's lip, boots scraping against soil that yields reluctantly, as if reluctant to release you from its protective fold, linking the safety of defense to the uncertain surge of offense in a chain forged from shifted fates. The air hangs heavy with the residue of smoke, a veil that softens the horizon's harsh lines, yet amplifies the desolation unfolding before you, where the golden fields now lie trampled under the weight of mechanical ghosts, their forms twisted in eternal repose like forgotten sculptures of ambition's downfall. Exhaustion tugs at your limbs, a constant companion that whispers of limits reached and surpassed, yet the command propels you onward, each step a deliberate defiance against the inertia that had rooted you in place for so long. Historians will later map the advance, noting how the Red Army reclaimed over 50 kilometers in the wake of Prokhorovka, a counter-thrust that exploited the Wehrmacht's overextension, pushing back elite divisions through sheer momentum and the unyielding flood of reserves that turned numerical disparity into inexorable pressure. But for you, it's the immediate tactile truth, the crunch of charred grass underfoot, the faint vibration of distant engines retreating like a receding storm, linking tactical gains to the personal rhythm of boots claiming ground inch by contested inch. The battlefield stretches as a metallic necropolis, tanks from both sides gutted and blackened, their hulls splayed open like eviscerated beasts whose innards spill forth in tangled wiring and shattered components, a tableau that mocks the engineers who birthed them, now reduced to rusting relics under the indifferent sun. You weave through the debris, stepping gingerly past a Panzer's crumpled turret, its cannon drooping like a wilted stem in a garden overrun by neglect. The scent of diesel lingering sharp and acrid, mingling with the earthier notes of upturned soil that clings to your uniform like an insistent memory. A cluster of sunflowers, once proud sentinels of the steppe's bounty, now lie scorched and bowed, their petals curling black at the edges, as if recoiling from the touch of flame, evoking a fragment of an old folk verse that drifts unbidden, sun gold on the prairie, bending but unbroken. A line that once spoke of harvest grace, but now twists into a poignant irony, linking nature's resilience to your frayed persistence amid this despoiled vista. The flower's demise stirs a quiet reflection, surfacing like a bubble from muddied depths. How war perverts even the simplest beauties, turning symbols of abundance into emblems of loss, a chiseled commentary on humanity's knack for sowing destruction where life once flourished unchecked. Bodies dot the landscape too. German soldiers sprawled in undignified poses, their uniforms muddied and torn, faces frozen in expressions that range from surprise to serene acceptance, as if death caught them mid-thought in this vast, impersonal arena. You pause beside one, a young face, not unlike those from your lines, his eyes staring blankly at the sky, as if questioning the cloud's indifference, and feel no surge of triumph, only a hollow echo that resonates through your core, a trammelled sorrow that humanizes the foe without bridging the chasm war has carved. Linking one fallen form to the next, you move on, scavenging what utility remains. A canteen half full of water that tastes faintly of foreign herbs, a ration bar wrapped in unfamiliar paper that you tuck away, its alien flavor a subtle reminder of the shared frailties that bind victor and vanquished in this grim exchange. There's no glee in the taking, only the mechanical necessity of sustenance, as if the act underscores the absurdity of borders drawn in blood, where survival feeds on the remnants of those who once opposed you. The advance gathers momentum, your squad fanning out across the reclaimed ground, rifles at the ready for sporadic resistance that flares like dying embers in a hearth reluctant to extinguish. A burst of machine gun fire chatters from a concealed nest, pinning you behind a gutted T-34, whose hull still radiates faint warmth, like a lingering embrace from a comrade long gone, and you return fire with measured bursts, the recoil jarring your shoulder in familiar protest. The nest falls silent after a grenade's muffled thump, smoke curling lazily from the breach like a final exhalation, linking skirmish to silence in the battle's ebbing flow. As you press forward, the steppe begins to reclaim its voice, the wind whispering through trampled wheat stalks, carrying hints of wild thyme that cut through the diesel's pall, a subtle resurgence that mirrors the stirring within you, where fatigue's heavy cloak lifts slightly, revealing glimmers of purpose renewed. During this push, you stumble upon a discarded German map. Its folds crease like the lines on an old man's face, markings scrawled in precise script that outline ambitions now thwarted. A blueprint of overreach reduced to litter fluttering in the breeze. You pocket it absently, not for strategy, but as a talisman of reversal, its ink a testament to plans unraveled by the unyielding soil that now buries them. The act stirs a wry introspection, drifting like smoke through your thoughts. How delicately fate mocks the cartographers of conquest, their lines drawn with certainty, yet erased by the chaotic strokes of human will. A satire on foresight that leaves empires to ponder their impermanence in the quiet aftermath. Linking relic to resolve, you continue, the ground firming underfoot, as if the land itself conspires in your favor, welcoming the reclaimers with subtle shifts that ease the march. Dusk approaches with a softening light, painting the wreckage in tones of amber that lend an almost ethereal grace to the desolation, as if the sun offers a benediction to the day's labors. You pause atop a gentle rise, overlooking the receding enemy lines, where distant figures retreat like shadows fleeing the encroaching night. Their withdrawal a tacit admission that momentum has shifted, linking their ebb to your flow in war's inexorable dance. A comrade claps your shoulder, his grip firm despite the wear etched in his features, sharing a canteen swig that tastes of victory's tentative sweetness, water warmed by the sun yet refreshing in its simplicity. Conversation turns to the road ahead, whispers of Berlin not as vengeance but as inevitable closure, a horizon that beckons with the promise of restitution for the scars born in silence. The night's veil descends fully, stars pricking the canopy like distant witnesses to the shift, their light a cool counterpoint to the embers that still glow amid the hulks below. You settle against a boulder, rifle across your knees, feeling the pulse of renewal course through veins that had grown leaden with despair, linking exhaustion's nadir to this nascent dawn of purpose. Dreams hover at the edge, visions of a homestead reclaimed, fields blooming anew under peacetime suns, unmarred by the tracks that once scarred them. A fragile hope that tempers the sorrow of losses tallied in absent faces. Yet woven into the reverie is that subtle undercurrent, surfacing like a ripple in calm waters. How war's cruel forge tempers not just steel but souls, birthing unbreakable resolve from the ashes of overreach. A profound irony that honors the unheralded architects of turning points. Their legacies a quiet balm for those in later eras who navigate their tempests with borrowed strength from such shadowed rebirths. The advance resumes with morning's light, the steppe awakening under a sky cleared of smoke's oppressive veil, birds tentatively calling as if testing the air's newfound mercy. You march with a steadier gait, the weight of scavenged gear a tangible reminder of gains wrested from the brink, linking each step to the broader arc of reclamation that history will etch as a pivotal pivot. The sunflowers, though battered, begin to nod again in the breeze, their resilience a mirror to your own, evoking that folk verse once more in a softer key, where bending but unbroken speaks not of loss, but of quiet regeneration. In this forward motion, a profound serenity settles, born from the acceptance that destiny's wheel, once turned against you, now aligns in subtle favor, forging from desperation's depths a legacy of fortitude that whispers across time, allowing distant hearts to beat in gratitude for the unscarred paths paved by such resilient strides. The road stretches westward, long and shadowed, but the spark endures, flickering defiantly toward horizons yet unseen. The advance unfurls across the steppe like a reluctant tide, reclaiming shores long contested, your boots sinking into soil softened by the blood of machines and men alike, linking each stride to the ghosts of battles that echo faintly in the wind's subdued murmur. The metallic cemetery sprawls before you, a vast tableau where tanks lie interred in shallow graves of their own making, hulls rent open like overripe fruits spilling mechanical viscera onto the parched earth, their forms twisted in postures of final defiance or surrender, as if the steppe itself has claimed them as trophies in a game where victors and vanquished blur into indifferent ruin. You navigate this labyrinth of steel, stepping around a T-34 fused to a Panther in a grotesque union, their tracks entangled like lovers caught in a fatal quarrel, flames long extinguished, leaving only charred husks that creak under the breeze's gentle probe. A subtle reminder of how war mocks unity by forging it in destruction's forge. The air hangs thick with the mingled bouquet of decay, diesel's sharp bite undercut by the sweeter rot of burnt residues, a perfume that seeps into your pores like an insidious ink, staining memories with the indelible mark of transience. Linking one wreck to the next, you pause beside a Ferdinand's upended chassis, its gun barrel drooping earthward like a wilted stem in a garden overrun by neglect, and glimpse the crew's remnants scattered nearby, limbs akimbo in undignified repose, their uniforms singed and soiled as if the fire had stripped them of pretense, revealing the fragile clay beneath. No surge of vindication stirs within. Instead, a hollow resonance echoes through your chest, a trammelled sorrow that humanizes these once formidable shadows, their young faces etched with the same bewilderment that haunts your reflections in quieter moments, as if fate delights in underscoring the shared absurdity of youth expended on such barren altars. You stoop to scavenge, fingers probing a discarded pack amid the debris, unearthing rations wrapped in foreign script, hardtack that crumbles with a foreign crispness, tasting of unfamiliar grains and a hint of synthetic sweetness that lingers on your tongue like a borrowed memory from a life not your own. Its sustenance, nothing more, yet the act carries a poignant weight, linking the enemy's provisions to your continuation, a quiet appropriation that mocks the borders drawn in blood, where survival feeds on the leavings of those who once opposed you with such fervent certainty. A wry undercurrent surfaces then, drifting like smoke through your thoughts. How elegantly futile these stockpiles prove, amassed for conquest yet scattered like seeds in a field sown for harvest by the unintended. A satire on preparation's vanity that leaves empires to ponder their perishability in the quiet aftermath of overreach. Bodies punctuate the landscape further west. German infantrymen sprawled in clusters where the counter-thrust caught them mid-flight, their forms contorted in the steppe's indifferent grasp, eyes staring blankly at a sky that offers no absolution. One lies face down, helmet askew like a crown slipped from a dethroned king, his hand clutching a faded photograph that flutters free in the breeze. A woman smiling from a pre-war idol, her image now dusted with the grime of this forsaken plain. You avert your gaze, feeling no ha-hey but a deepening void, a melancholic acknowledgement that war's scythe harvests without discrimination, linking foe to kin in the universal tapestry of loss, where young dreams extinguish alike under the weight of inexorable tides. The sight evokes a subtle introspection, born from the depths where resolve frays. How curiously mirrored our paths. These invaders who marched with the same illusions of invincibility that once buoyed your defenses, now reduced to silent sentinels guarding nothing but the wind's passage. A chiseled commentary on ambition's fleeting grasp. Sporadic resistance flares ahead, a machine gun nest chattering from a camouflaged rise like a cornered animal's final snarl. Bullets whipping past with the whine of thwarted intent, forcing you to drop low behind a gutted hull, whose metal still radiates faint warmth like a dying hearth's last ember. You return fire in measured bursts, the recoil jarring your shoulder in familiar protest, linking volley to volley until silence descends, smoke curling from the breach like a sigh of resignation. Advancing cautiously, you find the gunners slumped amid their weapons' embrace, faces pale in defeat's pallor, their ammunition spent in a bid that fate deemed insufficient. No triumph surges. Instead, a quiet sadness settles, tempering the push with the weight of shared humanity, as if each fallen form whispers of the fragile threads binding aggressor and defender in war's inexorable web. The steppe begins to reclaim its voice as you press on. Wild grasses whispering underfoot like secrets long buried now stirring to life, their rustle a counterpoint to the distant grumble of retreating engines that fade like echoes of a storm past. Sunflowers, though scorched in patches, tilt their faces toward the waning light, petals curling resiliently against the char, evoking fragments of childhood rhymes where nature bends but endures. A metaphor that now infuses your steps with subtle purpose, linking the land's quiet revival to your emerging conviction. You pocket a stray German insignia, its eagle emblem tarnished and bent, not as a trophy, but as a memento of reversal. Its once proud form now a relic of overextension, stirring a wry reflection. How delicately empires etch their symbols in metal, only to see them warped by the very forces they unleash. A satire on permanence that leaves history's pages littered with such faded icons. Dusk paints the cemetery in softer hues, amber light gilding the wrecks like an artist's reluctant mercy, casting long shadows that stretch across the craters like fingers reaching for reconciliation. A comrade falls in beside you, his gait steadied by the day's gains, sharing a swig from a captured flask whose contents burn with unfamiliar fire, a spirit that warms the core without dispelling the chill of accumulated loss. Conversation drifts to the horizon's call, whispers of pushing further west not as conquest, but as restitution, linking reclaimed ground to the broader arc of a nation's unbowed narrative, where each step honors the absent whose sacrifices pave this path. The act of sharing, simple yet profound, kindles a flame within, transmuting fatigue's heavy cloak into a mantle of quiet determination, a profound alchemy that forges meaning from the midst of desolation. Night's veil descends fully, stars emerging like distant witnesses to the shift, their light piercing the haze with cool precision that illuminates the wreckage below in subtle glimmers. You settle against a boulder overlooking the field, rifle across your knees, feeling the pulse of renewal course through veins that had grown leaden, linking the day's reclamation to the tentative dawn of purpose. Dreams hover at the edge, visions of a homestead blooming anew under peacetime suns, fields unmarred by the scars that now define this vista. A fragile hope that tempers sorrow with the promise of continuance. Yet woven into the reverie is that subtle undercurrent, surfacing like a ripple in calm waters. How war's cruel forge tempers not just steel but souls, birthing unbreakable resolve from the ashes of overreach. A profound irony that honors the unheralded architects of turning points. Their legacies acquired balm for those in later eras who navigate their tempests with borrowed strength from such shadowed rebirths. The push resumes with morning's light, the steppe awakening under a sky cleared of smoke's oppressive veil. Birds tentatively calling as if testing the air's newfound mercy. You march with a steadier gait, the weight of scavenged gear a tangible reminder of gains wrested from the brink, linking each step to the broader arc of reclamation that history will etch as a pivotal pivot. The sunflowers, though battered, begin to nod again in the breeze, their resilience a mirror to your own, evoking that folk verse once more in a softer key, where bending but unbroken speaks not of loss, but of quiet regeneration. In this forward motion, a profound serenity settles, born from the acceptance that destiny's wheel, once turned against you, now aligns in subtle favor, forging from desperation's depths a legacy of fortitude that whispers across time, allowing distant hearts to beat in gratitude for the unscarred paths paved by such resilient strides. The road stretches westward, long and shadowed, but the spark endures, flickering defiantly toward horizons yet unseen. The retreat unfolds like a shadow withdrawing from the sun's insistent gaze, German lines fracturing and pulling back across the steppe-scarred face, leaving behind a trail of smouldering relics that dot the horizon like punctuation marks in a sentence abruptly cut short. You stand amid the quieting clamor, rifle slung low, feeling the subtle shift in the air, a lightness that seeps into your bones like dawn's first rays piercing a long night's veil, linking the weight of endured sieges to this nascent breath of possibility. The T-34s dominate now, their forms rumbling forward with the assurance of avenging guardians, engines purring in harmonious defiance against the invaders' faltering roar, a mechanical symphony that drowns the echoes of fear with notes of impending reversal. Historians will later quantify the human cost, tallying over 70,000 Soviet lives extinguished in the salient's crucible, a staggering ledger that underscores the pyrrhic nature of such pivots, where victory emerges not from unscarred triumphs, but from the accumulated ash of irreplaceable absences, figures drawn from meticulous accounts that strip the myth to its bone, revealing a resilience forged in disproportionate sacrifice. You slump against a boulder overlooking the reclaimed ground, fingers absently tracing the rifle's stock, its wood worn smooth by hands that have gripped it through tempests, now receding like distant thunder. The act of cleaning becomes a meditative rite, rag gliding over the barrel in slow, deliberate strokes that polish away grime accumulated like layers of doubt, each swipe linking mechanical care to the inner restoration stirring within. A stale biscuit from scavenged rations crumbles between your teeth, its dryness a faint echo of home's absent warmth, yet you chew with deliberate savor, the simple sustenance a quiet affirmation that life persists amid the detritus, turning scarcity into a subtle feast of continuance. Nearby, a comrade mirrors the motion, his face illuminated by the waning light that casts golden halos around the wreckage, sharing tales of Stalingrad's encirclement reversed, words laced with a conviction that ignites sparks in wearied eyes, linking past reversals to the promise of Berlin's distant spires crumbling under similar inexorable pressure. The steppe whispers secrets of renewal, grasses bending resiliently under the breeze's caress, their rustle a counterpoint to the silence settling over the metallic graves, where panthers lie gutted and still, their once menacing forms now mere husks hollowed by the very momentum they sought to wield. You finger a crumpled photograph from your pocket, its edges frayed like the boundaries of memory itself, the smiling faces of kin gazing back from a pre-war idol that feels both achingly close and infinitely remote, a talisman that anchors you amid the flux, linking personal anchors to the broader current of collective resurgence. The image stirs a quiet musing, drifting through the haze of fatigue. How delicately war mocks immortality, preserving faces on paper while erasing them from the living tapestry. Yet in that erasure blooms an unyielding will to reclaim what was sundered, a chiseled irony that tempers sorrow with the subtle grace of persistence. As twilight deepens, painting the horizon in bruised purples that bleed into the ember's glow, comrades gather in loose circles, voices low and steady, weaving narratives of the road ahead, not as a path of vengeance, but as destiny's inexorable unraveling, where each reclaimed kilometer etches a verse in the epic of endurance. One speaks of factories in the Urals, hammers ringing like anthems of unbowed labor, churning forth the steel that now shields you, linking distant forges to this immediate shield against oblivion. Laughter bubbles faintly, hoarse from throats raw with shouts, at the absurdity of it all, how the invaders' vaunted precision falters against the sheer vastness of resolve, machines designed for blitz now bogged in the quagmire of human tenacity, a wry reflection that surfaces like a glint in polished metal, underscoring the folly of underestimating the intangible. You carve your name into a spent shell casing with a knife's dull edge, letters emerging jagged and imperfect against the brass's tarnished sheen, not for posterity, but as a private assertion against erasure, linking individual trace to the collective saga that war threatens to swallow whole. The act feels both futile and profound, a quiet rebellion against the anonymity that claims so many, where names dissolve into statistics, yet spirits endure in the uncharted spaces between. A comrade notices, offering a faint smile that creases his grime-streaked face, sharing a similar relic from his pocket, an etched bullet that bears his mark, forged in a moment of similar introspection amid the chaos, linking personal rituals to the unspoken bonds that weave resilience from threads of isolation. The night fully claims the steppe, stars emerging like pinpricks in a vast tapestry, their light filtering through the haze to cast ethereal glows on the wreckage below, where silence reigns supreme over the once roaring din. You lean back, the ground cool against your back, like a mother's indifferent hand offering belated comfort, dreams hovering at the periphery, visions of fields reborn under peacetime rains, unscarred by the furrows of conflict, families reunited in hearths warmed by stories of endurance rather than absence. Yet woven into the reverie is that subtle undercurrent, surfacing like a whisper in the wind. How war's cruel alchemy transmutes loss into unbreakable alloy, forging from the crucible of despair a spirit that defies quantification, a profound satire on suffering's yield, that leave survivors to carry forward the unheralded flame, illuminating paths for those in later epochs who navigate their shadows with borrowed light from such tempered forges. Morning breaks with a clarity that sharpens the landscape's scars, the sun rising unhurried over the metallic tombs, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers pointing westward, toward horizons pregnant with unspoken promises. You rise with a steadier resolve, the weight of your pack feeling less burdensome, as if the night's quiet communion has redistributed the load across invisible shoulders borne by comrades past and present. The advance resumes, footsteps sinking in rhythmic cadence that echoes the heartbeat of a nation stirring from its wounds, linking individual strides to the collective march that history will engrave as a turning point, where exhaustion's nadir bursts the dawn of unyielding conviction. Birds wheel overhead, their calls a tentative anthem reclaiming the skies from the wail of sirens, a subtle resurgence that mirrors the stirring within, where fear's chill yields to the warmth of purpose renewed. In this forward motion, you glimpse a discarded German helmet rolling gently in the breeze, its liner frayed like the illusions it once sheltered, a relic that speaks volumes in its silence. How empires arm their sons with symbols of invincibility, only to see them scattered like leaves in autumn's indifferent gusts, a chiseled irony that tempers your steps with a melancholic grace. Linking artifact to aspiration, you continue, the steppes' whispers growing bolder, grasses reclaiming the ruts carved by tracks now silenced, their growth a metaphor for the soul's quiet revival amid desolation. The road to Berlin looms distant yet tangible, not as a vendetta, but as fate's inexorable closure, a horizon that beckons with the promise of restitution for the uncounted voids left in its wake. The push gathers subtle momentum, squads fanning out across the reclaimed plain, voices rising in sporadic songs that weave through the air like threads mending a tattered banner, linking melody to morale in a harmony that defies the surrounding ruin. You hum along, the tune of folk lament, turned anthem, its lyrics evoking rivers bent but unbroken, much like the spirit that now courses through your veins, unbowed by the crucible's harsh tempering. In this resurgence, a profound serenity descends, born from the alchemy that transmutes shared scars into unbreakable alloy, honoring the unheralded weavers of history's fabric, their legacies a quiet balm for those in calmer climes who trace the fragile arcs from such shadowed rebirths to their unscarred dawns. The flame flickers brighter, enduring against the gathering dusk. The salient holds firm, a bulging scar on the step's face that refuses to rupture, its contours etched in the blood and bent metal of a contest where victory emerges not as a clarion call, but as a muted exhale. The Germans retreat a fading murmur across the horizon, like a storm that raged only to dissipate into uneasy calm. You stand on ground once claimed by the invaders, boots planted in soil still warm from the friction of their withdrawal, the air heavy with the lingering haze of expended fury, linking the clamour of days past to this profound stillness that settles like dust on a forgotten shelf. No cheers erupt from your throat or those around you. Instead, a profound silence envelops the line, broken only by the distant creak of cooling wrecks and the soft rustle of wind through trampled grasses, as if the land itself pauses to tally the cost, whispering of Pyrrhic balances where gains are measured in absences rather than acquisitions. Historians will later chronicle the toll. Some 200,000 Germans lost, dead or captured in the salient's vise. Figures drawn from meticulous ledgers that stripped the grandeur from the grind, revealing a hemorrhage that bled the Wehrmacht dry. Yet for you, it's the immediate void. Comrades' voices silenced mid-laugh, positions held at prices etched not in ink, but in the hollows of your gaze. You slump against a boulder, rifle laid across your knees like a weary companion finally granted respite. Fingers absently tracing the barrel's grooves, wiping away the grime of battle with a rag that frays like the edges of your endurance. Each stroke a mechanical rite that polishes not just steel, but the frayed contours of your spirit. The act feels both futile and essential, linking maintenance to meditation, as if, by restoring the weapon, you mend the invisible fractures within, turning the day's residue into a quiet affirmation of continuance amid the ruins. A stale bread crust from your pocket crumbles between your teeth, its dryness a faint echo of sustenance wrested from scarcity, chewed slowly to savor the illusion of fullness, while the step's scarred face stretches before you, craters pooling shadows like wells of unspoken regret. The absence of jubilation weighs heavier than expected, a bittersweet mantle that drapes your shoulders, underscoring how triumph, when steeped in such loss, tastes more of ash than ambrosia, a subtle irony that surfaces like a thorn in blooming soil. How victory mocks the victors, granting them fields reclaimed yet haunted by the ghosts of those who paid the toll. Fingers delve into your breast pocket, retrieving a crumpled photograph whose edges curl like leaves in autumn's grasp. The faces within, gazing back with frozen smiles from a world untouched by the steppe's desolation. A family tableau where laughter once echoed freely, now a fragile relic that anchors you amid the flux. You study it under the waning light, tracing the lines of a sister's grin or a father's steady gaze, feeling the pull of destinies intertwined, yet severed by the war's inexorable weave, linking personal anchors to the broader current of a nation's scarred narrative. The image stirs a melancholic resonance, a quiet sadness that tempers the day's gains with the weight of what remains unreclaimed. Homes distant, lives interrupted, dreams deferred in the shadow of this hard-won ground. And in that gaze, a wry reflection drifts unbidden. How curiously selective memory proves, preserving these paper echoes while erasing the living with indifferent strokes. A chiseled commentary on preservation's caprice that leaves survivors to carry forward the unfiltered burden of the real. The wind carries faint scents of wild herbs reclaiming the air, thyme and sage weaving through the pall of smoke like tentative threads mending a tattered veil, as you rise to survey the horizon where Berlin looms not as a tangible spire, but as a spectral promise, distant yet inexorably drawing nearer with each reclaimed step. The road thither stretches long and shadowed, paved with the remnants of ambitions shattered here, where the salient's bulge now flattens into a testament of unyielding hold, linking tactical steadfastness to the strategic arc that will carve through Ukraine and beyond. No fanfare marks this pivot. Instead, a subdued resolve settles within, born from the crucible where desperation alchemized into defiance, turning the steppe's wounds into badges of a spirit unbroken, though bent by the gales of conflict. You pocket the photograph once more, its warmth a faint counterpoint to the cooling air, feeling the subtle surge of conviction that this stand, however costly, seeds the soil for eventual harvest, a profound grace that honors the unheralded weavers of history's fabric. Their sacrifices a quiet foundation for those in later epochs who tread paths cleared by such shadowed labors. Scattered letters flutter amid the debris, German missives torn from pockets in hasty flight, their script alien yet achingly human. Words scrawled in ink that once carried hopes now dissipated like smoke on the breeze. You pick one up, not to decipher but to hold, its paper soft and yielding under your fingers like a truce offered too late, linking foes' intimacies to your unspoken longings, a fragile bridge across the chasm war has carved. The act feels both intrusive and connective, a quiet acknowledgement that beneath the uniforms lie shared frailties, dreams of hearths unlit, letters unanswered, lives suspended in the limbo of conflict's grip. No urge to destroy it arises. Instead, you tuck it away, a memento of the universal toll, stirring a melancholic introspection. How war mocks division by revealing the mirrored hearts beneath, enemies bound by the same fragile threads of longing. A satire on enmity's illusion that tempers vengeance with a reluctant empathy. The sun dips lower, casting the wreckage in elongated silhouettes that stretch westward like arrows pointing to the inevitable. The steppes' contours softening under twilight's gentle veil, as if the land seeks to heal its scars with time's indifferent balm. Comrades gather in loose knots, voices low and steady, weaving narratives of the path ahead, not as a trail of retribution, but as destiny's quiet unfolding, where each kilometer reclaimed etches a verse in the epic of restoration. One speaks of the Ural's unceasing hammers, forging the tools that shielded you here, linking distant labors to this immediate grace, while another hums a melody of the Volga's enduring flow, its notes a subtle anthem that binds individual weariness to collective resurgence. Laughter emerges faintly, hoarse yet genuine, at the absurdity of it all, how the invaders' precision faltered against the vastness of will, their machines now silent sentinels in a field they sought to master. A wry undercurrent that surfaces like a glint in fading light. How elegantly fate undermines the mighty, turning their instruments of dominance into monuments of hubris. A profound irony that leaves survivors to ponder the delicate balance of power and persistence. Night's canopy unfurls fully, stars emerging like distant beacons piercing the haze, their light filtering through to cast ethereal glows on the craters below, where silence reigns over the once roaring din. You settle against the earth, rifle at your side, feeling the pulse of revival course through veins that had grown heavy with doubt, linking the day's quiet reclamation to the tentative dawn of assurance. Dreams hover at the periphery, visions of a Berlin not conquered but concluded, spires crumbling under the weight of their overreach, unmarred by vengeance but by the inexorable turn of justice's wheel. Yet woven into the reverie is that subtle undercurrent, surfacing like a whisper in the wind. How war's cruel forge tempers not just resolve but remembrance, birthing from the ashes of triumph a spirit attuned to the cost, a chiseled commentary on glory's double edge that honors the unheralded bearers of history's burden, their legacies a quiet balm for those in calmer climes who navigate their shadows with borrowed light from such bittersweet illuminations. The push resumes with morning's clarity, the steppe awakening under a sky washed clean of conflict's pall, birds calling tentatively as if reclaiming the air's mercy. You march with renewed steadiness, the weight of your gear a tangible reminder of burdens shared and lightened, linking each step to the broader arc of a nation's unbowed narrative. The horizon beckons westward, long yet luminous with the promise of closure, where the road to Berlin unfolds not as retribution, but as a restitution for the voids etched in every heart. In this motion, a profound serenity descends, born from the alchemy that transmutes shared scars into unbreakable alloy, honoring the unheralded weavers of history's fabric. Their sacrifices a quiet foundation for those in later epochs who tread paths cleared by such shadowed labors. The flame flickers brighter, enduring against the gathering dusk, a beacon in the vast, indifferent night. The steppe stretches westward like an unrolled scroll, inscribed with the faint script of retreating shadows, its vastness now a canvas, where the scars of conflict blend into the horizon's hazy promise, linking the immediate hush of victory to the distant rumble of paths, yet untrodden. You shoulder your pack, its weight a familiar anchor that grounds you amid the shifting sands of resolve, each strap biting into skin worn thin by the crucible's unrelenting forge, as if reminding you that endurance carries its burdens forward, unasked yet indispensable. The air clears gradually, smoke dissipating like regrets whispered into the wind, carrying away the acrid veil that had shrouded the land, revealing patches of resilient green where grasses push through the churned soil, their blades a subtle defiance against the desolation that sought to claim them wholly. No grand procession marks this departure. Instead, you move in ragged columns, footsteps sinking in a rhythmic cadence that echoes the heartbeat of a collective stirring from slumber's edge, linking individual weariness to the broader surge of a nation reclaiming its stride. You pause to scribble a letter on a scrap of paper salvaged from the debris, words flowing haltingly like a stream navigating boulders, pouring out assurances to a family distant yet vivid in memory's sanctuary. Promises of return etched not in certainty, but in the fragile ink of hope, linking ink to intent in a ritual that defies the void. The lines speak of sunflowers blooming anew amid the ruins, a metaphor borrowed from the steppe's quiet revival, yet laced with the unspoken toll. Fields forever altered, harvest diminished by the seeds of war sown so carelessly. Folding the missive, you tuck it away, aware of the irony that surfaces unbidden, drifting like a leaf on that stream. How letters bridge chasms widened by conflict, carrying fragments of soul across lines drawn in blood, only to mock the sender with the possibility of silence eternal. A chiseled commentary on connection's tenuousness that tempers longing with a resigned grace. A final cigarette shared with a comrade seals the moment, its ember glowing faintly in the twilight, like a solitary star defying the encroaching dark. Smoke curling upward in lazy spirals that weave personal threads into the evening's tapestry. He inhales deeply, exhaling tales of a mother whose lullabies once warded off night's phantoms. Her voice a melody of unyielding warmth, now echoed in the wind's soft hum through the grasses, linking maternal echoes to the present's austere symphony. You listen, drawing on the cigarette's bitter glow, feeling the warmth spread through lungs raw from shouts and dust, a fleeting balm that kindles memories of your hearth, songs sung in kitchens lit by kerosene lamps, where worries dissolved in the rhythm of familiar refrains, now twisted by war's hand into anthems of absence. The sharing feels profound in its simplicity, a quiet communion that honors the unheralded rhythms sustaining spirits through tempests, linking ephemeral drags to the eternal cycle of remembrance that buoys the weary. Fatigue lingers like a shadow cast long by the setting sun, its presence a constant murmur in your veins, yet mingled now with a steely undercurrent that hardens your gaze toward the west, where Berlin's silhouette looms not as a spectre of vengeance, but as destiny's distant closure, a point where arcs converge in inexorable resolution. The road unfurls endlessly, shadowed by the knowledge of trials yet to unfold, rivers to cross, cities to wrest from clutches that once seemed unyielding. Yet each step infuses a subtle vigor, as if the step's resilient whisper infuses your stride, linking scarred earth to scarred souls in a dance of mutual revival. you reflect on the absurdity that bubbles from exhaustion's depths. How triumph, when stripped of fanfare, reveals itself as mere continuance, a wry nod to humanity's knack for marching onward despite the weights we accumulate, turning burdens into badges worn with quiet irony. Dawn creeps back with tentative fingers, painting the steppe in softer hues that blur the scars into a mosaic of resilience, where grasses reclaim ruts with insistent green, their growth a metaphor for the spirit's quiet resurgence amid desolation. You adjust your stride, the pack's weight settling into a familiar rhythm that syncs with the column's pulse, linking individual burdens to the collective surge westward. The horizon beckons, pregnant with the promise of closure, where the road to Berlin unfolds as restitution for the echoes of loss that linger in every step, a distant point where destinies converge, unmarred by judgment, but shaped by the inexorable turn of justice's wheel. In this motion, a serene conviction settles, forged from desperation's depths into a legacy of fortitude that whispers across time, allowing distant hearts to beat in gratitude for the unscarred paths paved by such resilient strides. The flame endures, flickering defiantly toward horizons yet unseen, a beacon in the vast indifferent dawn. Night drapes the steppe in a velvet shroud, its descent a gentle erasure of the day's harsh strokes, where the clamour of steel and fury yields to a profound hush that settles like dew on forgotten blades of grass. No more echoes of guns reverberate through the air. Instead, a soft wind stirs, whispering secrets over the husks of tanks that lie scattered like the discarded shells of colossal insects, their metal skins cooling under the star-pricked canopy as if exhaling their final defeated breaths. You lean against the flank of a T-34, its hull still radiating a faint warmth, like the lingering pulse of a comrade's hand clasped in farewell, the steel's subtle vibration a quiet reminder of the life it once harbored in the throes of motion. The ground beneath you cradles your form, yielding slightly to your weight, as if the earth itself offers a reluctant embrace, linking the exhaustion etched in your bones to the vast, indifferent repose that envelops the plain. Eyes closing slowly, you surrender to the silence, not with dreams of home's distant hearths or the soft contours of faces long unseen, but to the pure, unadorned void where thoughts dissolve like smoke in the breeze. No visions of golden fields unscarred, or laughter echoing in modest isbas intrude. Instead, the quiet becomes a sanctuary, a rare expanse where the mind wanders without anchor, drifting through the emptiness like a leaf carried on a river's languid current. In this stillness, the wind's murmur through the wreckage carries a subtle irony, surfacing unbidden in the recesses of reflection. How war's cacophony, once all-consuming, now bows to this fragile peace, mocking the machines that sought eternal dominance, yet succumb to rust and neglect. Their ambitions are reduced to whispers in the grass, a chiseled commentary on power's fleeting grasp that tempers the soul with a wry acceptance. Rest comes not as oblivion, but as a gentle submersion, where the body's aches fade into the background hum of existence, linking the day's unyielding labours to the night's merciful pause. The stars above watch impassively, their light piercing the haze like distant sentinels indifferent to the dramas below, casting faint glimmers on craters that pool shadows like wells of unspoken regret. You feel the subtle pull of tomorrow's uncertainties, the orders that may come with dawn's insistent call, urging you westward once more, toward horizons pregnant with trials yet unnamed. Yet in this interlude, a profound grace unfolds, born from the alchemy that transmutes desperation's embers into a quiet fortitude. honoring the unheralded rhythms that sustain spirits through tempests, allowing the weary to rise anew, their resolve etched in the subtle contours of survival's art. As the steppes' whispers fade, you've walked the scarred path of Kursk, where steel fell silent and spirits endured, a testament to resilience etched in fire and dust. The T-34's warmth lingers, a gentle cradle against the night's cool embrace, guiding you from battle's echo to serenity's hush. Let your shoulders soften, your breath slow, sinking into the quiet where dreams weave unscarred fields. If wakefulness holds you still, share your thoughts below. Where are you resting tonight, and what stirred your heart? Tomorrow, another tale awaits, whispering through the dark to soothe your sleepless hours. For now, release the day's weight, let the wind carry you, and drift into the tender arms of sleep, where the steppe stars keep silent watch over your peace.